global death network. Right now, as you listen to these words, somewhere in the world a mother is giving her sick child medication. She believes will save their life. She paid her last savings for it. The packaging looks legitimate. The pharmacy seemed trustworthy. But in 7 days, that child will be dead. Not from the illness, from the cure. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is what Secret Elite discovered was happening across 14 countries simultaneously. This is the story of Operation Mercy Shield, one of the most complex international interventions ever executed, and how a global coalition came together to stop pharmaceutical terrorists before they murdered thousands of the world's most vulnerable people. In March of last year, intelligence analysts at a classified coordination center began noticing an unusual pattern. Hospital mortality rates in specific regions of Eastern Europe, Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa were spiking dramatically. Doctors in remote clinics were reporting that standard treatments were failing at unprecedented rates. Children were dying from infections that should have been easily curable. Adults were developing mysterious organ failures after routine medical procedures. The common factor was not a new disease. It was something far more sinister. Interpol's Pharmaceutical Crime Unit had flagged suspicious shipping containers moving through the port of Rotterdam. The containers were registered as carrying agricultural equipment. Their documentation appeared legitimate. Customs inspections had cleared them without incident. But satellite surveillance revealed something troubling. The containers were being loaded at night, away from standard port operations, by individuals who did not appear on any employee roster. Signal intercepts revealed encrypted communications between individuals in India, China, Nigeria, and Brazil. They discussed shipment schedules using coded language referencing harvest seasons and crop yields. Financial tracking showed payments flowing through a complex web of shell companies registered in 17 different jurisdictions. But there were no crops. There was no agriculture. There was only death, packaged in boxes designed to look like healing. What these containers held would become the focus of the largest pharmaceutical crime investigation in modern history. Secret Elite assembled a task force within 72 hours of confirming the scope of the threat. Representatives from 14 nations gathered in an undisclosed location. Intelligence officers, medical experts, special operations commanders, and diplomatic liaisons crowded into a secure facility to confront a crisis that defied conventional response. The mission was clear, but the scope was almost incomprehensible. A criminal organization had been manufacturing and distributing counterfeit medications and vaccines across the globe for over 5 years. They had built an empire on human suffering. They had corrupted supply chains, bribed officials, and created distribution networks that reached the most remote corners of the world. And they were about to execute their largest shipment yet. The intelligence revealed a network of staggering complexity that had evaded detection through meticulous planning and ruthless operational security. Manufacturing facilities hidden in industrial zones across 4 countries produced millions of fake pills, capsules, and vaccine doses every month. These facilities employed hundreds of workers who believed they were producing legitimate generic medications. The quality control was sophisticated enough to pass basic inspections, but deliberately designed to produce products that would fail when patients needed them most. Distribution hubs disguised as legitimate pharmaceutical warehouses stored and shipped counterfeit products alongside genuine medications. This mixing strategy made detection nearly impossible. When authorities conducted random testing, they often sampled legitimate products while the fakes moved undetected. A supply chain that moved fake medications through 17 transit points before reaching patients created layers of deniability. Each transfer added documentation that appeared authentic. And at the center of it all stood a shadowy figure known only as the pharmacist, a former pharmaceutical executive who had left the industry under mysterious circumstances. He had built a billion-dollar empire on human suffering. His network employed chemists, logistics experts, financial specialists, and security personnel drawn from organized crime groups across multiple continents. He operated with the sophistication of a Fortune 500 company and the ruthlessness of a cartel kingpin. Think about this for a moment. Let it sink in. Every year, over 1 million people die from counterfeit medications worldwide. That is more than the population of some entire countries. These are not just statistics on a page. These are mothers who trusted doctors, fathers who filled prescriptions, children who took their medicine without question, grandparents who believed the healthcare system would protect them, people who sought healing and received poison instead. The secret elite investigation uncovered that this particular network was responsible for an estimated 47,000 deaths over 5 years, 47,000 families destroyed by grief, 47,000 funerals where loved ones never knew the truth, 47,000 graves filled with victims who never knew they were murdered. But what intelligence discovered next changed the entire operation from investigation to immediate intervention. It changed everything. Intercepted communications revealed that the network was preparing to distribute contaminated vaccines to refugee camps across 3 continents. This was not simply counterfeit medication entering general commerce. This was a targeted operation designed to exploit humanitarian supply chains and inject poison directly into the arms of the world's most vulnerable populations. The vaccines were designed to look identical to legitimate humanitarian aid shipments. They carried the logos of recognized international health organizations. The documentation was flawless. Even the temperature-controlled packaging matched exactly what genuine vaccines required, and they were scheduled for distribution in 11 days. The scale was almost impossible to process. 340,000 doses of fake vaccines were sitting in warehouses across 12 countries, ready to be injected into the arms of refugees, displaced families, and children who had already survived unimaginable hardship. These were people who had fled wars, famines, and persecution. People who had lost homes, possessions, and loved ones. The vaccines contained compounds that would not provide any disease protection. Analysis revealed that the contaminated doses contained industrial chemicals that would cause progressive organ damage over weeks and months. Victims would not die immediately. They would sicken slowly. Their immune systems would fail. Secret elite analysts calculated the potential death toll if the operation succeeded. Conservative estimates suggested between 15,000 and 25,000 deaths within the first 3 months. Long-term projections indicated the contaminated vaccines could cause ongoing health complications in over 100,000 survivors. Liver damage, kidney failure, neurological disorders. This was biological terrorism disguised as humanitarian aid, and it was 11 days from execution. The coordination required for intervention was unprecedented. Secret elite needed to simultaneously execute operations in 14 countries across 6 time zones. Every raid had to happen at precisely the same moment to prevent any part of the network from warning others or destroying evidence. They needed to seize all contaminated products before a single dose reached a patient. One warehouse missed could result in thousands of deaths. They needed to arrest over 200 members of the criminal network without alerting leadership. Intelligence teams worked around the clock, mapping every node of the network. In Mumbai, a factory producing fake antibiotics operated behind the facade of a legitimate generic drug manufacturer. The facility employed 300 workers who believed they were producing medications that would help people. Only a handful of senior managers knew the truth. Intelligence identified 17 individuals for arrest. In Guangzhou, a warehouse stored millions of counterfeit vaccine vials alongside authentic products. Legitimate shipments entered through official channels. Counterfeit products were integrated during night shifts. The challenge for Secret Elite was extracting only the fake vaccines without disrupting legitimate medical supplies. In Lagos, a distribution center supplied pharmacies across West Africa with medications that contained chalk, floor wax, and toxic industrial compounds instead of active ingredients. The operation had connections to armed groups who provided security and eliminated anyone who asked too many questions. Each location presented unique challenges that required customized operational planning. The Mumbai facility was protected by corrupt local officials who received monthly payments to ignore inspections. The Guangzhou warehouse was connected to legitimate supply chains that served hospitals across Southeast Asia. The Lagos operation existed in an environment where law enforcement authority was contested by armed groups. The solution required a level of international cooperation never before attempted. Diplomatic channels were activated at the highest levels. Presidents, prime ministers, and intelligence chiefs across 14 nations agreed to coordinate their actions with absolute secrecy. Military assets were repositioned under cover of routine exercises. Special operations units from 7 countries received classified briefings. Specialized medical teams were placed on standby to handle the contaminated materials. The vaccines contained compounds that required hazardous materials protocols for safe handling. 7 days before the scheduled vaccine distribution, Secret Elite received confirmation. All operational elements were in position. 2,000 personnel across 14 countries were ready to execute simultaneous raids. Medical containment units stood by. Arrest teams had identified and located 237 targets. But then intelligence intercepted a message that nearly derailed everything. The pharmacist had received a warning. Someone within the network had sensed increased surveillance. He was accelerating the timeline. Instead of 11 days, the vaccines would begin shipping in 48 hours. Secret Elite had less than 2 days to execute an operation planned for a week. What happened next demonstrates why this task force exists. Within 6 hours of receiving the accelerated timeline, all 14 operational commands confirmed readiness for immediate execution. Commanders coordinated across secure channels with precision that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier. Time zones were calculated and recalculated. Backup plans were activated. Every team knew their role, their targets, and their contingencies. Every operative understood that failure at any single location could result in thousands of deaths. At exactly 0300 hours Greenwich Mean Time, Secret Elite launched Operation Mercy Shield. In Mumbai, specialized units breached the factory compound from 3 directions simultaneously. The element of surprise was total. Workers on the night shift were secured without resistance. Security personnel were neutralized before they could raise alarms. Equipment was photographed, cataloged, and seized. Digital records were extracted before destruction. 17 individuals were arrested, including the facility manager who had overseen production of over 50 million counterfeit pills. In Guangzhou, the operation required exceptional precision. The warehouse contained both legitimate and counterfeit products stored in identical packaging. Analysts had spent weeks studying inventory patterns to identify exactly which pallets contained fake vaccines. Teams moved through the facility with surgical accuracy, seizing 340,000 counterfeit doses while leaving legitimate products untouched. The operation took 4 hours. Not a single authentic vaccine was compromised. The Lagos raid faced armed resistance. Intelligence had identified security personnel affiliated with organized crime groups. Secret Elite coordinated with Nigerian special forces who approached from multiple entry points. The firefight lasted 12 minutes. All hostile elements were neutralized. No law enforcement casualties occurred. Inside, teams discovered not only counterfeit medications, but also documentation revealing the network's complete financial infrastructure. Simultaneously, operations executed across 11 additional countries. In Brazil, a shipping company that facilitated transport was raided at multiple locations. In Turkey, a transit warehouse was seized along with shipments bound for Syrian refugee camps. 23,000 doses of contaminated vaccines were recovered hours before they would have been loaded onto trucks. In Kenya, a distribution network supplying fake anti-malarials to rural clinics was dismantled. The investigation revealed that thousands of children had already died from malaria because medications contained no active ingredients. In the Philippines, a counterfeiting operation producing packaging materials was shut down. Additional raids in Pakistan, Ukraine, Morocco, Thailand, Indonesia, Colombia, and South Africa completed the global sweep. By 0900 hours Greenwich Mean Time, Secret Elite had achieved the impossible. Every target location was secured. Every counterfeit product was seized. Every identified network member was in custody. Not a single contaminated vaccine had reached a patient. Intelligence had traced financial flows to accounts in 17 countries. Asset seizure teams moved to freeze over $470 million in criminal proceeds. Properties purchased with blood money were confiscated across 3 continents. Shell companies were dissolved. And then came the moment Secret Elite had been working toward. The pharmacist himself was located in a luxury compound outside Zurich. Swiss authorities executed an arrest warrant at precisely 1100 hours local time. The man who had built an empire on suffering was taken into custody without incident. His personal devices contained records of every transaction, every shipment, and every death his organization had caused. Consider what was prevented by Operation Mercy Shield. 340,000 contaminated vaccine doses never reached refugee camps. Children in Syria who had survived chemical attacks were not injected with poison disguised as protection. Families in South Sudan who had fled genocide were not given toxins in the guise of healthcare. The fake medication seized would have killed an estimated 22,000 people within the first year alone. 22,000 people who will now live. 22,000 families who will not gather for funerals. 22,000 futures that remain possible. Long-term health complications from contaminated products would have affected over 100,000 survivors. Liver failure, kidney damage, neurological disorders, compromised immune systems. 100,000 people who will now remain healthy. Instead, these victims will live. They will rebuild. They will have futures. The mothers who would have watched their children die will instead watch them grow. They will see first steps that would never have been taken. They will hear first words that would never have been spoken. The fathers who would have buried their families will instead see them thrive. The children who would have been orphaned will instead know their parents' love. They will become adults who never know how close they came to losing everything. This is what Secret Elite prevented, not statistics, lives. Every number represents a heartbeat that continues, a dream that survives, a future that remains possible. The network's dismantling sent shockwaves through the global counterfeit pharmaceutical trade. Other criminal organizations observed what happened to an empire that had operated with impunity for 5 years. They understood that no amount of money could buy safety. In the 6 months following Operation Mercy Shield, counterfeit medication seizures increased by 340% globally, not because more counterfeits were being produced, because other networks were being discovered and destroyed. The victims rescued in this operation are now receiving genuine medical care. Refugee camps that were targeted have been supplied with authenticated vaccines. Children are being protected from diseases that once killed thousands. The international community has strengthened verification systems. Secret Elite operates in shadows so that others can live in light. The families in those refugee camps will never know how close they came to catastrophe. The mother giving medicine to her sick child will never know that the medication she holds is genuine, because a criminal network was destroyed days before she needed it. This is the nature of Secret Elite operations. Success is measured not in headlines, but in silence, in the absence of mass casualty events, in the ordinary moments of life that continue because extraordinary actions occurred in secret. The 237 individuals arrested in Operation Mercy Shield are now facing prosecution in multiple jurisdictions. The charges include murder, terrorism, fraud, and crimes against humanity. The pharmacist himself faces trial at the International Criminal Court. The deaths he caused, the suffering he profited from, will finally receive justice. And somewhere in a refugee camp, a child receives a vaccine. A real vaccine. One that will protect her from disease. One that will give her a chance at the future she deserves. She will never know the story of Operation Mercy Shield. She will never know about the 2,000 people across 14 countries who worked together to save her life. She will simply live. She will grow. She will have a future. And that is enough. That is everything. How many operations like this happen without public knowledge? How many lives have been saved by interventions we will never hear about? Should Secret Elite have expanded authority to prevent pharmaceutical terrorism before networks grow to this scale? The world is safer than you know. Not because evil does not exist, but because there are those who stand against it in shadows. They ask for no recognition. They seek no fame. They want only to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Subscribe to Secret Elite for more stories of heroic interventions that saved lives the world never knew were at risk. Where evil operates in darkness, Secret Elite is there, stopping threats before they become tragedies. The shadows protect us all.